Hi, welcome to Ask Me About Dyslexia. My name is Pam Spock and I'm a dyslexia specialist. This is a four-part series discussing how to make the transition from high school to college. Even if you think that college is a long way off, or you're not even sure if your child is going to go to college, this series of videos will at least let you know what to expect when the time comes. Also, your child has the best chance of success if you start planning early. So just keep this information in your back pocket for if and when you need it. Just 4 little notes before we begin. Number 1, I prefer the term learning difference when talking about dyslexia rather than a learning disability. But you can't get help for a learning difference, so we have to call it a learning disability in order to get support. Number 2, most of my videos are addressed to parents, and this one is too, but since I know that college and high school students might be watching this video and a lot of it applies to them, sometimes I might talk directly to parents, but sometimes I might talk directly to students. I've given this presentation live before, and that's what ended up happening. So I might switch back and forth in who I'm talking to. Number 3, I'm giving general information, but make sure that you check with the college that you're interested in because policies are going to vary from school to school. And number 4, I'm going to create a playlist for this series, so be sure to check out all the videos in this series. All right, let's get started. This is the 4th in a 4-part series about making the transition from high school to college as it pertains to students with dyslexia. And in this video, we're going to talk about lots and lots of differences between high school and college and how it really affects and impacts students with disabilities. And I felt like this was really interesting information for all students to know. I would have liked to have this information before I went. It might have made me more prepared. Now, some of these will actually maybe make your child who has dyslexia, more interested in going to college because there's a lot of differences between high school and college, and some of them are actually beneficial to students who have dyslexia. But I want you to know about all of those differences, and so we're going to do some more comparing. The first video was more about like the legal and like fundamental differences between high school and college. These are just like general differences. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, when you're in high school, the graduation requirements and curriculum are fairly similar among all students. But in college, the graduation requirements and what you study varies by your major. And it's going to vary from college to college. Now in high school, there are very limited opportunities for specialization to tailor a curriculum to a student's strengths. Whereas in college, there are lots of course options available, and it's often easier to find a major with a curriculum that matches the student's strengths. That's great news for the dyslexic student. Another difference is that in high school, most of the learning happens in class, whereas in college, most of the learning takes place outside of class. You have to study on your own. That's because college students spend a lot less time actually in class than high school students do. So high school students spend about 30 hours per week in class, whereas college students spend between like 12 and 16 hours in class each week. So that just tells us that a lot of time has to be spent studying outside of class when you go to college. Now in high school, classes had maybe 20, 30, 35 students, whereas in college, you might have a class of 5 or 500. There's going to be a big variety there, and that's going to be very different. If you're in a big class of 500, you're not going to get a whole lot of individualized attention. Now in high school, it's a teaching environment where teachers are responsible for ensuring that the students learn. We talked about in, I think, the first video, that one of the differences is that the purpose or the goal for special education support services in high school is to help the student to succeed. Well, in college, it's a learning environment where students are responsible for ensuring that they learn all of their relevant material and that the accommodations are there to provide access to that material. And we also talked about that there's a shift from who's responsible. So the parents and the school staff are responsible in high school, whereas it all shifts over to the student when they go off to college. So students are expected when they're in college to take responsibility of finding out what they need to do and how to do it. They're responsible for accomplishing tasks, and they're responsible for accepting the consequences of their decisions. Whereas in high school, students are usually told what they have to do, and they're monitored to ensure that they do it. They're given lots of feedback for their performance. You're just more on your own in college. That could be good or bad. In high school, you got lots of reminders about upcoming assignments and tests and other work, including reminders if you have incomplete assignments. They're not going to do any of that in college. They're going to give you a syllabus, and you are responsible for everything on that syllabus. You need to look at it to find out what you should be reading in the textbook, when the tests and quizzes are, when projects are due. It's going to be all you, and so you're going to have to get organized. If you are not an organized person, you're going to have to get organized. There's lots and lots of apps out there that can help you to get organized. You need to learn this. In high school, another difference is kind of in the style of how teachers teach. Usually teachers in high school have been trained as educators, and they've been taught specific teaching methods. They might adapt their teaching style to meet the needs of specific students who are having difficulty learning the material. And they might use a variety of teaching methods in order to convey the material to the students. And that's great for different learning styles. You've got some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, some people are kinesthetic learners. But in college, it's going to be kind of different because professors are usually trained as experts in their field, and they may not have much, if at all, training in how to actually teach. And they may only use one style of teaching. Often it's lecture. And if students have difficulty learning with that style, the student is going to have to take steps on their own to learn the material. And when I say lecture, the professor may or may not be using a PowerPoint with the lecture. It may be just the professor up there waxing eloquent. And you've got to get it. So you've got to do whatever it takes to get that material. And they're probably not going to vary their instruction method. Now, the only exception that I would say is that if you're going to be studying education, particularly early childhood or elementary education, the people who are teaching you how to be a teacher have usually been teachers themselves and have learned how to teach. And so they often do use different types of learning instructional methods. And so I had, as a teacher, as an education major, I had wonderful teachers who use lots of fun things to teach us. And who knows, you might get some fantastic professors who have you learn by doing and use all kinds of visual aids. But the primary mode of conveying the information when you're in college is through lecture. Another difference is that in college, your final grade is based on only a few grades, whereas in high school, there's usually many grades that go into each quarter, and you have lots of chances to make it up. If you have bombed on a test, then you've got lots of chances to make it up throughout that time. Not so much. It's going to be big tests in college. Usually in high school, the tests are over things that have been covered in class, whereas in college, anything in the textbook is fair game. And you might not have even covered it in college. You've got to make sure that you are ready to be tested on any assigned reading or other materials, even if it was never mentioned in class. There's even a potential difference in what might be on the test, as in like the level of questions, higher order thinking skills. In high school, students are often asked to reproduce the information in the same way that it was presented to them. Whereas in college, students are more likely to be asked to apply what they have learned to new situations or in different ways than it was presented, in order to demonstrate that they have a deeper understanding of that material. So you have really, really got to know your stuff in college. If you are really, really struggling in high school, then chances are a teacher might approach you and see how they can help you. Probably not going to happen in college. They are willing to help you if you ask, but you have to initiate that. In high school, you can probably get by without strong note-taking skills, but it would be a good idea to practice them, because in college you're really going to need them. And then this final difference I mentioned in a previous video in this series, and that is the level of rigor and expectations that are going to be on you when you go to college. It's going to be significantly higher. You're going to be expected to produce high quality work. You're going to be expected to learn independently. You got to know the stuff that's in the textbook, whether it was covered in class or not. And you have to be able to use critical thinking skills, those higher order thinking skills, not just the surface level information. You've got to be able to apply that information to new situations. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to make you aware that the level of difficulty and rigor is just so much higher in college. And I'm not saying that you can't do it, okay? But if you thought, oh, high school, I did okay, I didn't even really need many accommodations toward the end, I could get by okay, it's going to be a lot more in college. You may want to consider going to get that support, going through the process of getting those support services in college, because you can always back off from them. It's a lot easier to get everything that you need, everything that you might potentially need, and then back off from those, than it is to say, no, I don't need those, and then start struggling, failing, dropping, and then say, oh, I should have gotten those accommodations and support. It's going to be way harder to go and get that later and to recover from that. You can always back off from them. You're just better off to cover all of your bases, to have more than you need, and then you can always back off as you realize what you need or don't need. So I hope that you have watched the other videos in this series. If you haven't, then I will link them below, and I have a whole playlist of those. There's 4 in the series. I hope that these videos will make the transition from high school to college a little easier, or at least let you know what to expect, and that it gives you some time to prepare for what you're going to need to know. So let me know in the comments if there was something here that kind of surprised you, or that maybe you went to college and you wish that you had known that before. I'd love to hear about it. Maybe you could tell us about a difference that I haven't talked about here that you think students should be aware of. Maybe you can tell us about your experience as a student with dyslexia. Tell us if you got special support or not, if you had any accommodations. Maybe you fought your way through without any special help, and you're really proud of that, and you want to tell us about that too. I'd love to hear it. So share this with somebody who needs it, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.